Look at your arm. Somewhere on it, almost certainly, is the small fading mark of a needle, a flu shot, a childhood vaccine, an IV line, a bag of fluid dripping into a hospital ward. Every one of them had to be proven safe before it was ever allowed to touch you. And the tests that proved it relied on blood. Not human blood, not red blood, blue blood. The color of liquid copper, drawn from an animal older than the dinosaurs. This is the horseshoe crab. Every year around the world, roughly 500,000 of them are caught, carried into laboratories, and bled alive. Drop for drop, their blood is one of the most valuable liquids on Earth, because it can do something no medicine we have ever made can do on its own. And here's the strangest part. It is only one of them. The deep ocean is the largest unexplored space on this planet, and quietly, without most of us ever noticing, it has become the most important medicine cabinet our species has ever found. The cures for our diseases are not all waiting in our laboratories. Some of them are a mile down, in the cold and the dark, inside creatures we have barely begun to name. To understand why, you have to stop thinking of the ocean as water. Think of it instead as the largest living space on Earth by far. More than 90% of the space where life can exist on this planet is underwater, and most of that is deep, cold, and permanently dark. Life has been evolving down there for far longer than it has existed on land. Billions of years of trial and error running in a world we have only just started to visit, and life in the sea faces a problem that shaped everything about it. In the open water, there is almost nowhere to hide. A creature that cannot run, cannot climb a tree, cannot dig a burrow, has to defend itself some other way. So an enormous number of marine animals learn to fight with chemistry instead. They make poisons, they make venoms, they make compounds that paralyze, that kill bacteria, that stop a rival's cells from dividing, that glue a wound shut in freezing water. A sponge anchored to a rock cannot flee a predator, so it fills its body with toxins instead. A snail too slow to chase its prey grows a venom that can drop a fish in seconds. Over hundreds of millions of years, the ocean became the largest chemistry laboratory that has ever existed, and every molecule in it was tested against the only judge that matters: survival. That is what makes the sea so valuable to medicine. Those molecules are not random. Each one was refined, generation after generation, to do one specific thing to a living body with terrible precision. A venom evolved to shut down a nerve. A toxin evolved to stop a cell from copying itself. And a molecule that can stop a cell from copying itself is, in the right hands, a molecule that can stop a cancer. We did not invent most of our best medicines. We found them. We went looking through the living world for chemistry too clever for us to have designed. And again, the most astonishing things we found were down in the water. The first of them came from an animal with a blue heart and no real brain at all. The horseshoe crab is not a crab. It is closer to a spider and a scorpion than to anything you would find on a dinner plate. And it has been crawling along the seafloor almost unchanged for something like 450 million years. It survived the event that wiped out the dinosaurs. It survived 3 other mass extinctions before that one. It was old when the first trees appeared. To look at one is to look at a living fossil, a design so successful that evolution has barely touched it since fish first had bones. And its blood is blue. Where our blood carries oxygen using iron, which turns red, the horseshoe crab uses copper, which turns a pale milky blue. But the color is not what made it priceless. What made it priceless is what that blood does when it meets bacteria. In the 1950s, a scientist noticed something that should not have made sense. When the crab's blood was exposed to certain bacteria, it did not just react. It clotted instantly, sealing the invader inside a thick gel. It turned out that horseshoe crabs living for 500 million years on a filthy seafloor with no real immune system like ours had evolved a kind of chemical tripwire. The instant their blood detects the toxins released by harmful bacteria, it clots around them and traps them. And that gave medicine something it desperately needed. Because the single most dangerous thing that can happen with an injection is contamination. If bacterial toxin gets into a vaccine, a drug, or an implant, and then into your bloodstream, it can trigger fever, shock, and death, even if every actual bacterium has been killed. We needed a way to detect those toxins down to the faintest trace before anything was ever put inside a human body. The horseshoe crab already had one, so we built our entire system of injectable safety around its blood. Today, that blood is harvested into a test that screens almost every vaccine, every injected drug, every IV bag, every pacemaker, every artificial hip and heart valve, before it is approved for use. If you have ever received any of these, the horseshoe crab was there, standing between you and an invisible poison. The cost falls on the animal. Each year, hundreds of thousands of them are gathered from the shallows, strapped to racks, and drained of up to a third of their blue blood, then returned to the sea. Many survive, but by some estimates, as many as a third of them may die, and the ones that live come back weakened. A creature that outlasted the dinosaurs is now declining, in places sharply, for the sake of a fluid worth as much as $60,000 a gallon. There is now a synthetic version, grown in a lab, that can do the same job without a single crab. After decades of resistance, the medical world is finally, slowly beginning to accept it, which means the animal that quietly protected billions of us may not have to bleed for us forever. If the horseshoe crab shows what the sea can do for safety, the next creature shows what it can do for pain. In the warm reefs of the Pacific lives a snail no larger than your thumb, wrapped in a shell so beautiful that collectors have died reaching for it. That is not a figure of speech. This is the cone snail, and it is one of the most venomous animals in the ocean. The cone snail cannot chase anything. It barely moves. So it hunts the way the deep teaches everything to hunt, by ambush and by chemistry. It carries a hollow, harpoon-shaped tooth loaded with venom, and when a fish drifts close, it fires. The venom hits the fish's nervous system so fast and so completely that the prey is frozen in place almost instantly, sometimes before it even registers being struck. One species is nicknamed the cigarette snail, from a grim piece of divers' folklore, that after it stings you, you have just enough time left to smoke one cigarette. That venom is not one poison. It is a cocktail of hundreds of different compounds, each one tuned to jam a specific switch in the nervous system. And buried inside that arsenal, scientists found something extraordinary. One of those compounds did not just block pain signals, it blocked them with a precision no drug we had could match by shutting a tiny gate that nerves use to pass pain along. From that single molecule found in the venom of a snail that kills fish for a living, we made a painkiller. A medicine approved in the year 2004 that by some measures is around 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. And unlike morphine, unlike every drug in the opioid family that has devastated so many lives, it is not addictive. It does not create the craving that the opioid does. A weapon evolved to cause total agony turned into one of the gentlest tools we have for ending it. That is the strange logic of the sea. The deadliest molecules in the ocean, the ones built to stop a body cold, are often exactly the ones precise enough to heal it. The most surprising medicines of all came from animals that look like they are barely alive. Sponges are some of the simplest creatures on Earth. No brain, no heart, no nerves, no organs. A sponge is little more than a living filter, anchored to one spot for its entire life, drawing seawater through its body. And because it cannot move, cannot flee, cannot fight, it survives the only way it can. It fills itself with chemistry, a defensive arsenal so potent that almost nothing wants to eat it. When scientists began studying the strange compounds inside a humble Caribbean sponge, they found molecules unlike anything in our own biology. Molecules that interfered with the most fundamental act a cell can perform, copying itself. And a cancer is, at its core, a cell copying itself out of control. From the chemistry of that sponge came some of the earliest cancer drugs ever made, still used today to treat leukemia, and clues that helped open the door to the first antiviral medicines as well. It did not stop with sponges. a small soft creature called a sea squirt, a blob that filters water on the seafloor and looks like nothing at all, turned out to carry a compound now used in chemotherapy for aggressive cancers. A delicate, mossy colony of tiny animals that crusts over rocks and shipwrecks holds a molecule under study against both cancer and the slow erasure of Alzheimer's. A soft sea slug grazing in the shallows gave up a toxin so good at killing cells that a modern cancer drug now uses a version of it as a warhead, delivered straight to the tumor. These are not powerful predators. They are the quiet, the still, the overlooked. The things you would step over on a beach without a second glance. And they were carrying, inside their soft bodies, some of the most precise weapons against our deadliest diseases that we have ever found. They had been working on the problem of how to control a runaway cell for hundreds of millions of years before we ever thought to ask. But the ocean gave medicine something even greater than drugs. It gave us the tools to do medicine at all. Off the coast of North America drifts a jellyfish that glows with a soft green light. For most of history, that glow was just a curiosity, a pretty trick of the tide. Then scientists isolated the protein responsible for it, the molecule that makes the animal shine. And they realized they could borrow it by attaching that glowing protein to other things, to a gene, to a virus, to a single protein inside a living cell. They could suddenly see the invisible. They could light up a cancer cell so it could be tracked as it spread. They could watch a nerve fire, watch a disease take hold, watch the machinery of life run in real time inside a living body, all because a jellyfish had taught us how to make biology glow. The discovery was so important that it won the Nobel Prize in the year 2008, and it is now one of the most widely used tools in all of science. A huge fraction of modern medical research quite literally runs on the light of a jellyfish. And the deep gave us another tool, just as fundamental, from an even stranger place. Around the hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, in water hot enough to melt lead, kept liquid only by the crushing pressure, live microbes that should not be able to exist. They thrive in heat that would destroy almost any other living thing, and to do that, they evolved molecular machinery that simply does not break down when it gets hot. We took that heat-proof machinery out of those vent microbes and built it into a technique for copying DNA over and over quickly and reliably. That technique became the backbone of modern genetics. It is how we read genomes, how we catch diseases early, how forensic labs identify a suspect from a trace of skin, how the world tested billions of people for a virus during a global pandemic. The ability to copy DNA on demand, one of the defining tools of modern science, was made possible by life clinging to a volcano at the bottom of the sea. The ocean did not just hand us medicines, it handed us the instruments we use to find every medicine that comes after. And here is the part that should stop you cold. We have barely started looking. Everything you have just heard, the blue blood, the venom, the cancer drugs, the glow, every bit of it came from the thin sliver of the ocean we can actually reach, the shallow reefs, the coastlines, the shallows a diver can swim down to. That is a sliver of the whole. The vast majority of the sea, the deep and the truly abyssal, the miles of black water and the seafloor beneath it, remains almost completely unexplored. By many estimates, more than 80% of the ocean has never been mapped, observed, or sampled by anyone at all. Which means the medicines we have found so far are not the harvest. They are the few fruit that happen to be growing within arm's reach. Right now, that is changing, and it is urgent that it does. Because medicine is facing a slow catastrophe. The antibiotics we have relied on for a century are failing, one by one, as bacteria evolve to resist them. And we are running out of new ones to replace them. Infections we have considered trivial for generations are creeping back toward being deadly. We need new weapons, and we need them from somewhere we have not already exhausted. So researchers are now going deeper than ever before, hauling up sediment from the abyssal plain, sampling the microbes that coat the deep sea floor, screening creatures from the vents and the trenches for compounds we have never seen. They are already finding them. New antibiotics, new molecules being tested against the most stubborn cancers and brain tumors we know. Whole families of chemistry that exist nowhere on land, waiting in animals that have never had a name, in a part of the planet we are only now learning how to reach. The deep ocean may be the single greatest source of new medicine left on Earth. And we are opening it at the exact moment we need it most. Which makes the last part of this story the hardest to tell. We are racing to read the library at the same time we are burning it down. The deep sea is under more pressure now than at any point in human history. Bottom trawlers drag heavy nets across the seafloor, flattening in minutes communities of life that took thousands of years to grow. The water is warming and turning more acidic, changing the chemistry of the entire ocean faster than most of its life can adapt. And a new industry is preparing to mine the deep seabed itself, to scrape up the metal-rich nodules that carpet the abyssal plain in some of the least explored places on the planet. Places that may hold the very compounds we are searching for. We are bulldozing a pharmacy we have never finished walking through. Every species lost down there is a chemistry experiment hundreds of millions of years in the making, erased before anyone ever opened it. The cure for a disease that has not yet been named could be sitting in an animal that goes extinct in the dark, unseen, the year before we would have found it. Even the horseshoe crab, the one that has guarded so many of us, is quietly slipping. As its numbers fall, the shorebirds that fly thousands of miles to feast on its eggs are starving and vanishing alongside it. 500 million years of survival thinning out within a single human lifetime. There is real hope in this story. The synthetic substitutes, the protected zones, the fact that we now know what the deep is worth, not just as a wilderness, but as the closest thing we have to a second chance against our own diseases. The same century that learned to strip the deep is the one that learned to value it. Which side wins is still being decided. The ocean has kept its medicines in the dark for 4 billion years, and it has only just begun to share them. What we do next decides whether we ever find the rest or lose them before we knew they were there. The ocean keeps its secrets. But this time, the secret might be the thing that saves us. If you want to keep going down with us, into the places the sun has never touched, subscribe to Blues Below. There is always something further down.